Let me talk to him. Let me talk to him.
Welcome to the Matt Schneidman Show.
That's a guy who is an intriguing one because he was an undrafted free agent.
Follow Matt on Twitter and Instagram at Matt Schneidman.
This is good stuff.
Or use the talk and text line at 1-414-799-1973.
If he can carry over what he's done in practice to games, then maybe we could start talking about, okay, Packers might have something here.
Now with Doug Russell, here's Matt Schneidman on the game.
Matt Schneidman Show Monday, October 2nd, Vegas week. This is a big one for a couple reasons. And I know the Packers maybe weren't the forefront of Wisconsin sports news today. The Brewers are about to begin a playoff push. The Bucks had media day, unveiled the first photo of Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo in person. You like that? That was a good pronunciation.
That
of that for someone who
was.
doesn't cover the team.
I was going to say, Mr. Football, I saw Cassidy Hill at AmFam Field today, and I'm like, what are you doing here? There's no football being played here today.
And she was at Lambeau this morning, too.
Oh, wow. Okay, there you go. So she was doing multiples as I was, although her drive was a lot longer than mine. I just went from the downtown practice facility, which has a really long name that I don't even know what it is, to American Family Field. So
Okay.
that's a very short drive between those two places.
Well, it has kind of been a little bit of a dead time in Green Bay regarding the Packers because they're coming off a Thursday game and have an extended break until next Monday night's game in Las Vegas against the team formerly known as the Oakland Raiders, my former stomping grounds. I covered the Raiders their last 2 years in Oakland in 2017, 2018. What we saw out of Lambeau Field today was a handful of press conferences. Matt LaFleur spoke. The three coordinators spoke. We normally get them on Thursdays. Today, we got them after they came back into the building after the long weekend. No players in the building today. There's going to be a light practice tomorrow with some locker room availability and practice viewing. And then they are off Wednesday and then back at it Thursday for the start of what would be Wednesday during a normal week. But we also heard from offensive position coaches. You know, during the season, we talked to the offensive position coaches once a month, and then the defensive position coaches once a month. Today were the offensive coaches. There wasn't much newsworthy that came out of it, but there was one line from Matt LaFleur, and I don't want to read too much into it, but that's kind of our job as sports reporters. He was asked about the chances of David Bakhtiari returning this season. Now, of course, David Bakhtiari is currently on IR. He must miss at least 3 more games, so he's first eligible to return in Week 9 when the Packers play the Rams at home. Ian Rappaport has reported that Bakhtiari is essentially done for the season, that he already had one knee surgery. He's going to have another one in the near future. Bakhtiari just turned 32. We know his contract situation. He's got 1 more year on his deal. If the Packers cut him this offseason, they free up $21.5 million in cap space. He's arguably the best left tackle in football when healthy, but he can't stay healthy. Best ability is availability. He has not been available. So for as good as he can be, at what point does it become this is too expensive for him not being available? Matt LaFleur was asked about the potential of him returning this season, and LaFleur said this. I'll let Dave comment on that. I know he wanted to talk to you guys later on. Now, a lot of people were saying, oh, is he retiring? Is he going to tell you guys he's retiring? I don't think so. My guess, and this is not based on any inside information I have, my guess is either he says, you know, here's where we're at, here's what happened, here's some more specifics about the current knee situation. I'm going to do my best to get back on the field, or we get kind of a Green Bay farewell from David Bakhtiari because he knows he is not playing again this season. Gun to my head, I would be more surprised than not if he has not played his last snap for the Green Bay Packers.
It's kind of what the tea leaves are reading, right? Because
which is just, I don't want to say it's sad, but it's unfortunate because he's so good and his knee has just failed him.
Yeah, and you wonder, in that same vein, whether or not, I know he doesn't want to retire. I get that. But you wonder if there's going to be another team that, if they do take a chance on the bulky knee, what the price might be, and will he ever be able to play physically ever again? I know he doesn't want to retire. I get that, but there's a lot of guys who probably didn't want to retire when they did. Joe Thomas probably didn't think that his last snap was going to be his last snap. If you want to go back into the way back machine, Joe Theismann probably didn't think that snap was going to be his last snap. Turns out the snap in his leg was it. That was the last snap he ever played in the NFL. Sometimes these things happen, and it sucks. It's part of the NFL. Still doesn't mean that it doesn't suck.
Of course. And what the Packers are left with is Rasheed Walker at left tackle. Now, when they drafted Rasheed Walker in the 7th round last year, I don't know if they said, here's our left tackle of the future. Sean Clifford maybe did, because that was his left tackle at Penn State, and
Sure.
said, oh,
Hey,
Packers are grooming this guy to be their left tackle of the future. But listen, he's been decent in the first couple games, and leave it to Adam Stenavich, their offensive coordinator, to keep it more real than everyone. And quick aside here, a couple weeks ago when Adam Stenavich was asked about Josh Nijman, who's filled in admirably for Bakhtiari the last couple of years as a left tackle and also started at right tackle, Stenavich said something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing here, yeah, he's a backup tackle for us. Some people rise to the competition and some people don't. And that was in reference to Zach Tom beating out Josh for the right tackle job. And Matt LaFleur did not like that. He called me aside in the locker room and wanted to give a quote on Josh, and it was a far more PC quote. And today, this isn't a stark difference from what we've seen in the past from coordinators and assistant coaches. There's nothing. Luke Butkus said, the 5 guys, here, let me get the exact quote. He said, the 5 guys that we went out there with on Thursday night, they battled their butts off. They were warriors. I mean, you gave up over 20 pressures.
Sure.
Joe Barry, he can just launch cliche after cliche about trying to get the run defense figured out. And I tweeted it out today. People throw their arms up on Twitter when these coaches don't rip people and don't tell it how it is and say, fire them. Secret, what they say into a microphone at the podium is not a representation of reality in terms of what they say behind closed doors. And I say that to say Adam Stenavich keeps it real more than anyone. So when he was asked about Rasheed Walker today, he pretty much just said there's some good and there's some bad. And that's about as good as you're going to get. So is he going to be the left tackle of the future here? We don't know. He said he's been good. There's been some bad in there too. Some things we've got to correct. I think with him, just focus on being fundamentally sound is his biggest issue. But I love how he competes, love how he comes off the ball. There's a lot of good in what he's doing, so we just have to keep working with him and hone up those details.
Are the coordinators required to talk to the media?
Yes, once a week.
Okay. Because I know in college they're not.
Well, when I covered the Raiders, Rich Bisaccia didn't talk once a week, but the offensive and defensive coordinator did. So yes, is what I think the answer is.
Okay. Because I know that there have been coaches who don't want their coordinators or assistant coaches at all to speak ever and under any
Doesn't Luke
circumstances.
Fickell not have his guys talk?
It doesn't. Nope. He doesn't neither. And Paul Christ used to let Jim Leonard, because he was the defensive coordinator and Paul Christ was basically the offensive coordinator and head coach. In fact, he was for a couple of seasons officially. But he did let Jim Leonard talk once a week, but there have been, but Fickell doesn't. I mean, we haven't heard from Phil Longo. We haven't heard from Mike Tressel at all this year, not since training camp.
That's just how some guys choose to run their program, and some guys like Lincoln Riley kick reporters out for no reason.
Sure.
Anyway.
Different in college. You can get away with certain things in college.
Exactly. There's probably more uncertainty surrounding the left tackle position because we know Bakhtiari is going to be out for a while, at least 3 more games. There's probably at least some more optimism that Royce Newman, with all due respect, will only have to start 1 more game at left guard. People saying Sean Ryan, there's a reason he hasn't played yet. And Royce Newman wasn't the only bad one on Thursday against the Lions. Elton Jenkins, they didn't put him on IR from that sprained MCL, remember? So he was out the Falcons game, so that one doesn't count in terms of the 4 he has to miss. So he's already missed the Saints game, the Lions game. He'll, assuredly miss the Raiders game this week. And then they have a bye. I know Matt LaFleur maybe, and the players don't like this early bye, would rather it closer to the middle of the season. But this bye is coming at a pretty decent time in terms of getting some of these guys back. maybe Eric Stokes, maybe Elton Jenkins. It'll give Watson, Jones an extra week to rest after what I'm assuming will be a full workload for them on Monday night in Vegas. But the likelihood is, and I've learned with this team and especially this offensive line, especially the left side of this offensive line, never to count your chickens before they hatch with injuries. But it looks like Elton Jenkins will be back week 7 against the Broncos in Denver, because that would be the 4th game he missed. And if they anticipated him missing 4 games, they would have just put him on IR.
Yeah, and it's obvious how much they need to get, some semblance of their starting offensive line back. And I know that, Zach Tom on the other side, on the right side, on Thursday night, he was obviously injured.
Right.
But he wasn't good either. The whole offensive line was, it was the worst we've seen them in a while. So, but again, injuries pile up, and you're right. Normally you want your bye week a little bit later in the season. You don't necessarily want it as late as it's been the last couple of years in December, but
right.
If you can just get it around, like my birthday's in the first, in the second week of November, that's the perfect sweet spot for, I think, a bye week. And it works out for me too. So if they could just kind of figure that out, that
it's
would
not
be,
all about you, Doug.
That would be great. I have the same birthday as Larry McCarron,
You have the same birthday as Larry McCarron?
I do.
Just 2 former athletic specimens.
Right. Same year, too. I kid.
I don't believe that.
I kid.
So there are a couple storylines I'm watching this week. I tweeted this morning. Good week for reporters. A lot of juicy stuff to chew on. Devontae Adams playing against his former team for the first time. There was a little bit of a scare in the Raiders-Chargers game yesterday when he went down with, I believe it was a shoulder injury. I did not think he was going to return, but he came back, scored a touchdown that was not ruled a touchdown that the Raiders didn't review. I understand that people don't want the other team's best player playing, but for me, it's good theater. It's entertainment. I'm excited to see Devontae play again in person. The other one, Daniel and Anders Carlson not going up against each other. Rich Bisaccia was sure to correct me when I worded it like that today, but Daniel Carlson, 28 years old, Anders, the rookie, 25, brothers as kickers for opposing teams in the NFL. That'll be cool. Rich Bisaccia facing the team that didn't hire him as its full-time head coach and is probably still regretting that decision until this day. I know Packers special teams haven't been great this year, but you have to wonder if they had hired Bisaccia after he helped get them to the playoffs. And it's been nothing short of a failure, disaster, whatever you want to say it, with Josh McDaniels. And then the fourth storyline, I'm going out to Vegas on Wednesday night, going there to work on
seems a little early for a Monday game.
A little bit of a work project ahead of time. So I'm going out for work purposes, not for, you don't have share tickets or strictly pleasure purposes.
Who else is playing at the park?
But my fourth storyline is when I walk into that press box on Monday night. Now, I won't be, betting on the NFL, but how much gambling money will I be up or down by the time I walk into that Allegiant Stadium press box on Monday night?
All right. I think it depends on what kind of fit that you're going with, because you're the best dressed. I say this, and I've said this for years. You're the best dressed reporter that we've got in Green Bay. So I'm wondering what the Las Vegas fit is going to be.
Ooh, that's a good question.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Fair enough.
How many people are still around, by the way, from when you covered the Raiders? I know, obviously, there's been a move from Oakland to Las like and it's been a few years.
In terms of players?
Both. All the way around. I don't know how many team employees traveled with the team from Oakland to Vegas.
The head PR guy, Will Kiss, is still there.
Okay.
One of his assistants, Cam Russo, is still there. Deuce Gruden is still there. He stayed on after his dad resigned as an assistant strength coach. I'm going through the roster right now. Daniel Carlson. I actually talked to him the first week he got there after the Vikings cut him and he came over. So Daniel Carlson, Max Crosby's first ever one-on-one interview in the NFL, I believe, was with me after his press conference. He was a 2019 draft pick, so that was a couple months before I came here. So Daniel Carlson, Max Crosby. I'm going down the list right now. Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Abram, and Cleveland Ferrell were 2019 draft picks when I was there. So I covered the beginning of Josh Jacobs, the beginning of Antonio Brown too. Beginning and almost end of Antonio Brown. Colton Miller, who was their 2018 first-round pick, the left tackle from UCLA, is still their left tackle. I think that's it. There's been a lot of turnover there. Oh, Hunter Renfrow. I'm just going down their roster right now. But yeah.
So a few.
I watched their game yesterday against the Chargers, and I came away saying Packers should win this game. Yes, the Raiders put up a fight in the second half, and a good fight at that, but the Packers should win this game. I will say, anytime the other team has 3 different players who are each among the best at their position in the NFL, you always got to be worried from a Packers perspective about that player single-handedly taking over a game. And Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, and Max Crosby are all capable of doing that.
Okay. Listen, I don't think there's anything that's a given with the Packers this season. I think this is going to be an up and down season. They may be a little bit better than I originally had thought, but I still think that what we've seen have been some growing pains. And obviously the injuries are playing a huge part of it as well.
We got someone on the phone lines, do we?
We do. Tom in Brookfield has been hanging on.
Hi, Tom. Sorry to make you wait.
Oh, that's okay. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just I guess 2 things I'd like to come across with is I don't know what people's expectations were with this team. I think, 7-10, 9-8, whatever. I'm elated with the way Jordan Love has played.
Elated?
When he hasn't been on his back, he's been on the line with the injuries has been a disappointment. But the biggest disappointment that I have in the Packers is number one, which is the case every year. Their best player on offense, 33, doesn't get enough touches, and their defensive line continues to be brutal.
Yeah, appreciate the call. I said this before the season started, and since the season started, I fall almost every year for the Kenny Clark or whoever it is propaganda of we have more pieces supporting Kenny this year. We have better depth. And this year I bought it because TJ Slayton and Devontae Wyatt look good in camp. I said to Bill Huber and Rob in the office today, I'm done reading too much into what happens in camp because once you get in an actual game and play different teams, it's a completely different story. It might just be till the end of time that the Packers don't have enough on the interior defensive line. It's not enough in the pass game. It's not enough in the run game. Now, Devontae Wyatt's been solid, I would say. He led the team in pressures against the Bears. He tied for the team lead against the Lions. But still, anytime you give up over 200 rushing yards and over 4 yards per carry, or over 200 rushing yards in 2 games, over 4 yards per carry in 3 of the 4, it's not good enough. So I would definitely say that defensive line is leaving plenty to be desired. You're right. And then I've liked what I've seen from Jordan Love. I've been more impressed than not. It certainly would help to keep him upright. You've seen what he's capable of when he stays on his feet in the Bears game, in the Saints game in the fourth quarter, in the Falcons game in the first 3 quarters. The one time he was sacked against the Falcons, I believe it was on a free blitzer. And then the one time he was sacked against the Saints was when A.J. Dillon missed a blitz pickup. So I agree. If someone was to ask me, do I think he's the guy? I think he's the guy. How much of a guy can he be? That is still up for debate. Now, giving 33 the ball, it's tough because he got 11 touches in the first 2.5 quarters of the season opener, 127 yards and 2 touchdowns. He only played 2.5 quarters, like I said. So if they continue with that game, with what the score was, maybe he gets, 15, 20 touches. I think Aaron Jones should be getting 25 touches a game, but he's proven to have an injury history. It's a long season, but I am totally with you in the fact that the Packers need to stop treating Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon like a 1A or a 1B. It's a 1 and a 2. Treat Aaron Jones like a feature back. Now, he misses 2 games. He obviously isn't going to get carries in those. He comes back against the Lions, but he was on a pitch count. So there's a reason that he and A.J. Dillon got the same amount of carries. Aaron Jones played 20 snaps on offense. A.J. Dillon played 38. Ben Sermons, the running backs coach, said today that he anticipates A.J. Dillon, or not anticipates, but hopes Aaron Jones is back at a full workload on Monday night against the Raiders. I would anticipate that he is. So if you still don't see a quote-unquote lopsided workload between him and Dillon, then it's start asking all the questions that I feel have popped up every year of why isn't Aaron Jones getting more touches? And those questions go back to the Mike McCarthy days.
Yes, true. I'm thinking about, what you were saying about, certain players looking good in training camp. And my mind kind of floated over to Madison for just a second. And I know obviously your focus is on the Packers, but I spent most of the spring watching spring ball with the Badgers, and Tanner Mordecai looked like a Hall of Fame quarterback in the spring. We're still waiting for that to kind of manifest itself in the fall. The two guys that really stood out for me for Wisconsin's defense were Ricardo Hallman and Alexander Smith. And we're still waiting for them to look as good in spring ball or as good in, the games as they did in spring ball. So sometimes, when guys look good in camp, it doesn't always translate. And,
Right.
and when they go up against other teams, man, those, as who is it? Barry Alvarez, who I think used to say, those kids are on scholarship too.
Isn't that right?
So
it's different, even from joint practices.
Definitely.
Anyway, we got to get to a break. We're going long with this first segment, but after the break, I put out a call for questions for the show on Twitter earlier, and we have a handful. Couple bad ones, couple good ones. Someone wants me to go off on David Bakhtiari. I'll probably just go off on the person who asked that question. Stick with us here on The Game. We'll be right back after the break. This is the Matt Schneidman Show.
Wouldn't have it any other way. If you're with me, let me hear you say, I like it like that. Hey, windows down, chilling with the radio on. I like it like that. Damn, sun so hot. Make the girls take it all off. I like it like that. Yeah.
Matt Schneidman Show, Monday, October 2nd, Vegas week. Packers, Raiders, next Monday night. But first, we got to tell you about our favorite product. You know what time it is. Who doesn't love a free cap? When you order Iron Jock gear between now and October 15th, not only can you take 20% off your entire order, but Iron Jock will also throw in a free performance cap. Just enter promo code CAP20. That's CAP20. You'll love it. Go to ironjock.com for details. That's ironjoc.com. Now through October 15th. Iron Jock's a great product, and that's no cap. See what I did there?
I like their caps, though.
Well,
they're good caps. What I'm saying
do
is,
you get that saying? Do you know what no cap means?
I've heard it. I know.
It means I'm not lying. Like I'm being real.
I learned something today. Thank you, Matt Schneidman.
I'm glad that
I can use that with my nieces and nephews.
You know, it's tough for me to get a cap that fits because my head's huge. This is the same size head I had when I was in middle school. They called me Jimmy Neutron in middle school because my body was a lot smaller. I wasn't 6'2".
Okay.
And I used to walk around the hallways with textbooks lying flat on my head because my head was just so big and kind of flat on the top. So much surface area to hold textbooks. But I've grown it. My 5th grade yearbook photo is one of the funniest things you'll ever see because it's this head on a body that's like 3 times as small.
Nice. When I was in middle school, I had a thick head of luscious, curly, wonderful mullet hair.
Yeah, for anyone watching on the stream, my hair is already receding. My dad's bald. My grandpa on one of my sides was bald. So I'm getting there.
Hopefully so someday I'll be welcoming you to the club?
More. Yeah, probably. Okay. But I kind of want to deny. Anyway, Mo from Illinois is on the line. We don't want to keep him waiting. A recurring guest of the show, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that is correct, Matt. Big fan of the show. I'm so happy you got your own show now. You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to speak a little bit about my ongoing concerns with Coach LaFleur.
Okay.
And it has stemmed since last season, to be honest with you. I believe that, first of all, like by retaining Joe Barry this offseason, like I've been saying it since he made that decision. I believe that's a fireable offense in itself. And it's like coaching malpractice, in my opinion. I was very disgusted with that, and I'm still very disappointed with that. And we're seeing the results of it right now. And I don't see anything getting better in that regard. Another reason is the Royce Newman experience. Clearly, last year it didn't work. And here they are trotting him out again this season. And we saw what happened against the Lions. I mean, he got bulldozed 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And the underutilization of Aaron Jones continues to be an issue. Now, I know he's a bit banged up and he's coming off of a hamstring injury. But even when healthy, it seems like it's been a 1A, 1B type thing. And it shouldn't be that way. Aaron Jones is a clear number 1 running back. And A.J. Dillon is the number 2. It's that right now. So I've been very disappointed with LaFleur. He's very soft, in my opinion, and I believe this team is a true representation of Coach LaFleur. I believe that this is a soft team. They don't do well against physical, smash-mouth football teams like their division rival, the Detroit Lions. Dan Campbell is LaFleur's daddy at this point, and I don't trust LaFleur anymore. I really don't. He gets outcoached several times throughout the season, and yeah, I'm looking to move on from Coach LaFleur, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thanks for the call, Mo. I'll try and remember the couple things you brought up. All fair points. I will say, like I touched on with our last caller, Aaron Jones has been healthy for 2.5 quarters this season, so we can't really judge the workload he's getting now. I know you're saying it, stretches to seasons prior. And yes, like I said, it's been a question even dating back to Mike McCarthy's tenure. Why isn't Aaron Jones getting more carries? And it's a fair question. I will say the decision to bring back Joe Barry, a couple things here. Is Joe Barry a good defensive coordinator? Right now, we'd be hard-pressed to give an affirmative yes. He was not very good at his pass stops, and the team has been inconsistent since he's been here. Now in his 3rd season, 4 games through it. But as I've said before, and people probably won't like me saying this, we don't know how much is actually his fault. It's easy to blame him, especially when you have 7, 8 first-round picks on defense, to say, oh, the players aren't playing well, must be the coach's fault. But this is a reference I've used several times on this show to really delegate blame accurately, you'd have to sit down with coaches, players, hook them up to a lie detector test, and see what the call on every play was, see what the assignment was, watch the play. It's tough. But the old saying is, if you can't fire the players, who do you fire? It's the coach. I was having this discussion with someone today. If Joe Barry's gone, then Matt LaFleur's seat automatically gets hot because that was his handpicked guy. That's who he moved on from Mike Pettin from. And another thing is, you can't just keep cycling through coaches. This is Matt LaFleur's third special teams coordinator since he's been here. First Sean Meninga, then Mo Drayton, now Rich Bisaccia. This would be his third defensive coordinator since he's been here in 5 years. Someone's always going to take the job because there are only 32 of these jobs in the NFL. But what precedent does it set? What idea does it give off if you just don't give your guys any job longevity or job security? Now, I understand Joe Barry's in his third year. The results haven't been there, so it's kind of different. But I wonder if there's part of Matt LaFleur. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying this might be a thought in his mind to say, we can't just keep firing guys or moving on from them. And the other thing is, the most concerning thing, I don't know if it's the most concerning, but one of the most concerning things about LaFleur is his repeated clock management issues. Now, maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe there haven't been as many in years past as there seem to have been this year, but two stick out right now. It's the first drive field goal against the Falcons when they lined up for a 51-yarder. And yes, the operation needs to get that right. But as a head coach, you need to call a timeout, especially if it's at 51 yards and you're not going to kick it at 56. Got to call a timeout. Then at the end of the first half against the Lions, LaFleur calls a timeout with 41 seconds left on 3rd and 6 to give the Packers enough time to try and go down and score when they get the ball back. Lions kick a field goal to make it 27-3. They complete a 6-yard pass, I think it was, or a 5-yard pass to Josiah DeGuara on the first play of the next drive, and LaFleur lets 12 seconds run off the clock. And then when I asked him about it the next day, last Friday, he says, yeah, should have called a timeout. That's a couple times. That's a head coach. You're in your 5th year. Got to figure that out. And what was the third thing he brought up?
Let's see. I forgot.
It was Aaron Jones. It was Matt LaFleur. Anyway, I'll think of it. We have another caller. We don't want to keep...
Adam in Chicago.
Adam in Chicago. How we doing?
Good. I don't want to pile on the Matt LaFleur hate, but there's another thing that I think should be mentioned is that how many times have we heard Matt LaFleur post game say, "Oh, we need to run the ball more. We should have called more runs." It's like, dude, you're the one holding the plays. Like, why are we routinely hearing him say the same thing when he's the one calling the plays? Like, if we want more runs, it's not like it's Rodgers audible and at the line this year. It's this guy calling the plays. So start calling more run plays. And the second part from that game plan against Detroit, I mean, Jordan Love is doing 5-step dropbacks. Why was he not moving the pocket out and getting him on the roll a little bit, getting him to actually call some plays where Jordan Love would be successful? And we all saw the line was getting absolutely demolished for the first half there. And all the plays, you go back and look at the film that was posted on Twitter, and it's like he's got 5-step dropbacks, which of course he's going to get lit up. And the second thing I want to bring up from the earlier segment is, we talk about getting Kenny Clark help, and it looks like I bought into the fake hype on the line. And let's not forget that the outside linebacker room was really hyped up this year. I mean, we had 6 guys deep. We were supposed to have pressure on. The stats come out today, and it's still only a one-man show causing any pressure. I think Kiki's second at like 9%, which was horrible. Actually, no, it was Luke Van Ness who was second, and it was ranked way at the bottom of the league in pressure. But at the end of the day, Kenny Clark, he has some flash in the first half. How many games now have we seen where he's just completely disappeared in the second half? I mean, I didn't even hear his name once in the Detroit game in the second half. So I think that while we give him a lot of credit, he also has been disappearing this year.
Yeah, I appreciate the call. A couple good points again. Good points for a Monday when there was no game yesterday. We always appreciate it. Yeah, Kenny Clark didn't have a great season last season up to his standard, and he's made a couple nice plays this year. I will admit, when I go back and watch the All-22 or watch the tape, I watch it with the story I'm going to write in mind. So if I'm writing a story on the offensive line, I'll just watch the offensive line and, maybe just skip through the defense. But yes, we haven't seen as many splash plays from Kenny Clark. I will say this. With the edge rusher group, when's the last time we saw the edge rushers really contribute to defending the run? We've seen guys get after the passer here and then, but since Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith showed no interest in sealing off the edge in that 2019 NFC Championship game, it requires edge rushers to stop the run too. We always focus on the interior defensive linemen, but the edge rusher's got to stop the run too. Even Rashawn Gary, he doesn't really impress me against the run. Rushing the passer, Preston Smith's been kind of a non-factor, it seems. Rashawn Gary still is a one-man show for now. Kingsley Enagbare has done nothing really of substance this season since that 2-sack game against the Seahawks in the preseason. So up front is definitely a concern. With the play calling, yeah, you would like to see Jordan Love get out on the move in designed plays because he's capable of doing that. Their whole game plan was terrible against the Lions. And with Matt LaFleur, yes, it really infuriates people when he gets up there and says we need to run the ball more because it's like that meme of we're all trying to find out the guy who did this. And it needs to happen. He said it a million times. We need to run the ball more. We need to run the ball more. We need to run the ball more. Now, I understand that every game is different and there's a game plan going in and it could get messed up. And the one, out I'll give him on this is if you're passing on first down, which is fine, you shouldn't do it all the time, but if you got sacked or you throw the ball backwards like Jordan Love did on 1st and 10 and it gives you a 2nd and 21 or 2nd and 20, then there goes the drive without running the ball. Because when you get in 2nd and long and 3rd and long, that completely screws up your playbook because you can't run the ball anymore. So when he says we need to run the ball more, that also requires the offensive line holding up on 1st down so you don't get yourself in 2nd and 3rd and long. That also requires your quarterback not throwing the ball backwards. Like, yes, I will give it to you. It's maddening for a fan, and I understand that, to keep on hearing LaFleur say we need to run the ball when he's the one calling the plays. And it is different now with Jordan Love because Jordan Love's not changing as much as Aaron probably. But at the same time, there are some extenuating circumstances that do affect that. Still think it needs to happen more. And I remember what Tom or Mo from Illinois, I believe, the third thing he brought up was Royce Newman. And it's a reflection on Matt LaFleur being a bad coach or a, lack of judgment for keep trotting him out there. Who else are you going to put out there? Elton Jenkins is hurt. What you could do, I'll say this. What you could do is move Zach Tom to left guard and put Josh Schneidman at right tackle. That's probably the logical explanation or alternative if you want to put your best 5 out there. But it's not like he has a litany of options. There's clearly something that they see in Josh Schneidman that they don't feel is adequate to start at right tackle. Otherwise, they would do it because they preach best 5, best 5, best 5. In my mind, their best 5 is Tom at left guard, at least when Elton Jenkins is hurt, and Josh Schneidman at right tackle. Clearly, they don't feel the same.
Clearly. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure why, but if you're preaching best 5, they were, like you said, they are a little bit hamstrung by the fact that they've got so many injuries, but everybody's expected to contribute on some level, right? And yeah, I guess I don't fully understand some of the moves that are made, but again, going back to when Matt LaFleur stands up there and says, I think we should run the ball a little bit more, and the response is kind of like, okay, yeah, maybe you should, but you're the one who's holding the play calling sheet. You're the one who's calling the plays in. Yeah, I don't know.
We got another caller.
We do. It's Duke in Brookfield. Oops.
Couple from Brookfield today.
Yeah, Brookfield's big. They're big Matt Schneidman show fans out in the B field.
Excellent. Duke, what do we got?
And I'm a big boy from Brookfield, so I'm 270 pounds. How do you
Attaboy.
like that?
Girthy.
So are you submitting your name into the left guard competition?
No, but what you guys said makes a lot of sense. As far as the Josh Neiman thing, when they had to play him at left tackle the last couple of years for Bakhtiari, he was actually pretty darn good.
Yeah.
For a backup tackle. So
right.
Whatever happened to him, I don't know if there's something that we don't know about, but why they have, crap canned him, I'm not quite sure. And you're probably right that Zach Tom would be better at guard and Neiman, maybe even Neiman at left tackle, because the guy that's playing left tackles is weak too. I mean, let's face it. But I'm really calling about the running back stuff. I mean, everybody's on this Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is 195 pounds soaking wet. The more carries you give him, the less you're gonna get. And it's been obvious over the years. He gasses out at about 12 touches. Go back and look. 12 touches, he's gassed. He's 195 pounds. Where they went wrong was they totally missed on their number 2 back. Dylan can't get away from a grandmother. I mean, he's so slow. Patrick Taylor's a better football player. Patrick Taylor's darn good. But, the guy can't even figure out that he needs to have 3 active running backs. He goes with 2. What happens if one of those guys gets hurt, or let's say Jones gets knocked out again, and all you've got is Dylan? I mean, you got nothing. So until he figures out that you carry 3 running backs every game in this league, 195-pounder going against a 255-pound linebacker or 300-pound lineman, how many carries do you think he's going to do well for?
It's a fair point, and I guess that's part of the reason that we're seeing them balance out the workload more than some fans would like, because Aaron Jones isn't a guy who has proven throughout his career that he can stay healthy for 16 games. He is a smaller running back. It is interesting to note, though, that his yards after contact per carry numbers are better than A.J. Dillon's, so it's not like he's some pipsqueak. I still think they should give him more carries. I'd have to look into when he starts to, flame out, but I understand it's a long season. He's a smaller back, relatively speaking. So that's their thinking. I still think you need to get the ball in your best player's hands and just ride with him. He makes too much money to be on like a snap count. He's only played a full season twice in his career. This is his 7th year. And I believe they have kept 3 running backs active every game.
I believe they have too, because Emmanuel Wilson, he's been
right.
active.
Patrick, game 1, it was Jones, Dylan, and Patrick Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor was elevated. Emmanuel Wilson was inactive. Game 2, when Aaron Jones was out, it was Dylan, Taylor, and Emmanuel Wilson. Game 3, it was Dylan, Taylor, and Emmanuel Wilson. Game 4, it was Jones, Dylan, and Emmanuel Wilson, and Taylor was not elevated. So they always have 3 running backs active. Even when they kept 2 on the 53 last year, they would just elevate a 3rd. So they're not just going into a game with 2 running backs. That would be silly. But I do wonder whether, and we've had this discussion before, whether Patrick Taylor or Emmanuel Wilson is a better number 2 option than A.J. Dillon in the long term. A.J. Dillon has proven he is a somewhat serviceable number 2, but his deficiencies as a feature back are magnified when Aaron Jones doesn't play and he has to take on a bigger workload.
Yeah, he just doesn't have the burst. I mean, he doesn't
Right.
have the speed. He doesn't have the agility that Aaron Jones does.
And that's fine. Listen, if the Packers could go back and redo it, they'd go back and redo a lot of things, pretty much every 3rd round from the past 6 years.
Yeah.
But is A.J. Dillon the right number 2? I wonder, when they drafted him in the 2nd round, did they envision him eventually taking over the number 1 role for Aaron Jones? Or did they really think that having a second solid running back was that important that they needed to use a 2nd round pick on him? I really do think they envisioned it being a 1A, 1B or a 1A, 1A thing. It's clearly not that. And this is what they have now.
I think that what they envisioned was just having, two running backs, like you said, 1A, 1B, but with different skill sets to give defenses different looks. It just hasn't worked out that way because you don't spend a second round pick on a running back unless you think that that running back is going to be at least, a long-term starter. And by long-term, I mean, 4 or 5 years.
Without a doubt. We'll touch on that a little bit more after the break as we get close to wrapping up this Monday, October 2nd edition of the Matt Schneidman Show. Stay with us after the break. We'll get to some more of your questions here on The Game.
Chick in the West, kind of way. She sits on her ass, he works. billboard, baby, do a leap and make them dance when they come on. Everybody looking for a dance floor to run on.
If you wanna run away with me, I know a galaxy and I can take you for a ride.
Matt Schneidman Show, Monday, October 2nd, wrapping up here. Let's get right to it. We got one more caller, Monis and Mequon. What do we got?
Gentlemen, thanks for having me on. Yeah,
My
I'm just
pleasure.
curious what you thought about this detail that Matt LaFleur mentioned in his press conference following Thursday, that he's been empowering Jordan Love to can plays at the line when the defense is loading the box, basically encouraging him and coaching him to change from a run early on in these games. As a Jordan Love believer myself, I'm a little disheartened that he hasn't necessarily been able to beat the defense when they're basically challenging him in this regard. So what do you guys think about the coaches basically empowering Jordan and failing, against these matchups when the opposing defense is loading the box?
Yeah, it's always a tricky conundrum because when they load the box, are all 8 guys, staying down? Is it a disguise in coverage? Are some of the linebackers or, if it's a box safety, are they going to drop back once he snaps the ball? It's something a young quarterback has to figure out. I think it's a good sign that the Packers are putting more on his plate and encouraging him to change that stuff. It shows they're confident in his reads pre-snap. It shows they're confident in his ability to, make a play post-snap. But do we really expect him to do it to perfection right away? Probably not. Now, the common ideology, what makes sense is you don't want to run into a loaded box as much as you pass into one. You wouldn't pass into the box, but you get what I'm saying.
Try to pass over the box.
Right. I would say it's encouraging that they're empowering him, but we need to realize it's probably going to be a learning curve because remember, he's started 5 games in his NFL career. Yes, he's learned from, or I should say he's watched one of the best pre-snap call makers to ever do it, probably. It's another thing to do it yourself. I'd have to dig deeper and look at the intricacies of every situation where other teams load the box and whether Jordan Love cans out of it or not, what the initial call was. So there's so many layers to this, but I would just say it's encouraging that they're empowering him, and we should probably, keep a closer eye on it in games to come, see when he does can out of plays and see the success rate of those. But even when he does that, teams are so good at disguising things these days that if he cans out of a run play when there's a loaded box, 2 of the guys in that box could drop into coverage and not stay down against the run, even when they think, a run might be coming. I don't know. You get what I'm saying. I kind of stumbled over that last part, but there's so many layers to it.
I think you have to encourage, and like you said, the word empower your quarterback to, if there's something at the line of scrimmage that he doesn't like, he's got to be able to check out of that. And
right.
If it doesn't work out, obviously that's something that they'll study in film study, but you can't, if your quarterback doesn't have confidence in the play when he goes up to the line of scrimmage and he sees something that just doesn't jive with him. Yeah. You've got to at least allow him to, at least some freedom to do something else, to do something that he feels confident in, because if he doesn't feel confident in the play, it's probably not going to work, even if it is a disguise. So that's why they have film study. And that's why they'll say, well, what were you thinking here? And, this is the coverage that they had there, and, they'll work through it. But yeah, I mean, you got to let him do it.
And I found it interesting right before we wrap up here, when talking about that speed option play that has not worked out, LaFleur said that's going to stay in, but he said we have to have a way to get out of that play if the look that they're getting against it isn't good. There's not a can to get out of that play. LaFleur said most plays do not have a can to get out of. So maybe that's something, the Packers incorporate, is certain plays find a way to get out of them, to give Jordan Love that flexibility, because, that speed option specifically is one they do not have a can out of, and it's kind of screwed them a couple times. That's all we got for Monday, October 2nd. We'll be back right here on these airwaves tomorrow at 6 after some more availability tomorrow. This has been the Matt Schneidman Show. Thanks for listening on The Game.
see you